Welcome to my channel. I'm Dr. Romano. Today's problem is to answer the question, why do we have real estate bubbles? And so I'm going to walk you through the history as for the past 25 years, why did this happen? And I would like to answer a number of questions people ask me. If you think real estate bubbles have always been around, it's not true to the extreme that it was in the past 25 years. For the past 25 years, since the mid-1990s, we had a president that took office, and his goal and the reason why he ran is to put everyone in their own house and to allow students to get unlimited funds to go to school. And there was a reason for that, is because we had a changing economy. Our economy in the 1970s was receiving a decline in our manufacturing sector. In other words, in the 1960s, it was at its peak. And then after the 1960s, the manufacturing sector started to go down and down and down. And as it went down by the mid-1980s, it was apparent that it became a really big problem because a lot of people no longer had pensions, they no longer had jobs, etc. And you've seen across America in small towns and in Manhattan as well. I remember what it looked like when I was a little kid. It was a thriving business producing products. And so that president, I won't say his name, I'm sure you know who I'm talking about, in the mid-1990s, I graduated high school that year. And I remember him signing a bill that helped people, Americans, to purchase their first house. And he was going to make it easier to do that. And the fact that you could put less money down, less collateral, etc. Because I remember when my father went for a loan, he needed to put up collateral to buy another house. And he also signed an agreement that allowed banks to lend students unlimited funds. That was also a disaster. So from the mid-1990s, you also had government leaders all meet and they discussed what was going to happen. The local cities, big cities particularly, were going to increase their police presence and their security to make the cities safer. Because from the mid-1970s to the late 1980s, Manhattan and other cities were a really dangerous place. It was infested with graffiti, drugs, and crime. And when you go into the subway, it was filth. So in order to create and to revitalize the local cities, I should say the big cities, you had to make it so that interest rates were low so investors could invest money and make a profit. That was the beginning of the boom. These booms and examples were also used in other countries. For example, in London, it used to be that a townhouse in Belgrave Square was only less than a couple million. Today, that same townhouse is worth 100 million. So the actual people that are born in London, even government leaders, can't afford to live in Belgrave Square anymore. Before we continue the video, please remember, if you want to say thank you, do thumbs up. It's on the bottom of the screen. And I want to thank you so much. Well, the rest of the world followed the American example. I don't know if this was a good example or what, but what the issue was, it wasn't that he wanted to have everyone have their own house and he was going to make it easier. There was nothing wrong with that real estate markets. You could save your money and buy a house with 5 years income in the 1970s. And by the 1980s, you could do the same. Sometimes you have to think about what was the actual reason behind it. And as a PhD graduate, these are the things I look at. What are the correlations? Why did this happen? Why did that happen? Etc. Because the industrial age was becoming an end, because the wages in the US and the cost to produce a product in the US became expensive. And so it's not just because wages went up. Yeah, they did. But it's the dollar. America became a powerhouse as a global leader in 1940s when the atomic bomb was created. And it created a sense to the other countries in the world that their people could hold on to the dollar and basically protect their assets. So people in other countries, they were saving their wealth in the US dollar, not the dollar, but the $100 bill, because their currency was very unstable, especially South America, other countries in the world as well, Africa, Asia, many places this happened. And what happened was we only had a certain amount of currency in existence at that time in the 70s. So the president in the 70s, I'm not going to even say his name, he allowed a change in our currency. And because of that change that happened, the American government and the American standard of living had to go up so that we as a society, it costed more to live here than elsewhere. And this happened in England. It actually happened in England, and today people are extremely poor. I feel so bad. It happened in Italy. Overnight, you see manufacturing leave the country in the mid-2000 period, between 2000 and 2010. So were we the first country to create this change, go from manufacturing to basically service country? Or were we just the first example? I believe that we were the first example because the manufacturing sector was decreasing overnight from the late 1970s to all of the 1980s. And by 1990, it was very apparent that in order to employ people, a huge percent of the population, that there had to be either a change, that they had to put tariffs so that the American business people that are producing these products could actually stay in business. If you remember, if you have a lot of family or friends, overnight, one friend after another of the family, friends of the family, their factories were closed. They went bankrupt. You name it, overnight it went bye-bye. And I don't know if this was intentional to have a better government, to have a better standard of living for their people, or was it that the government in the US realized that things were changing and they had to make a fix? That fix was the real estate market. So now they were going to put people to work by building buildings, by building houses, mortgage brokers, you name it. The building sector is enormous, whether it's installing products, renovating, decorating, everything. Because if you have cheap loans, you're gonna apply for a bigger loan to fix your house. And because of this, you have now the real estate bubble 25 years later. Because that president, instead of fixing the issue, they realized that maybe the only fix at that time period, at that cycle, was to create a real estate employment sector to balance the manufacturing sector that we were losing, to push those people over to building homes and buildings, etc. And so you also seen interest rates go down, because in order for them to accomplish that goal, they had to have cheap interest rates. So Ira Greenspan, he, of course, he was part of, the goal. He also made up a joke, laissez-faire. No, that was all a plan to create a real estate boom, because you need the wealth of America to be the strongest, the highest. And in order to do that, you need to let real estate prices go skyrocket. And 25 years later, we are here. They dealt with the first bubble in the year 2000, then the next bubble in 2008, 2009. However, this next bubble, they can't just lower interest rates because they can no longer sustain the levels of the house values. So now it's becoming a tipping point in our society because the average person now can't afford to buy real estate, not even in a small town. So what do? Well, you let it collapse. We're gonna have a 30% drop, not a 20%, because at 20%, we need low interest rates. But this drop is a 30% drop, maybe even a 40% drop, because right now we're not gonna have low interest rates and the interest rates will not go down. It's a changing point in our society, our government, our economy, to go back to manufacturing, because now it's expensive to have your products made outside the country. Shipping costs, they're going up. It's enormous. The prices just to fill up my Suburban, $180 for a tank of gas. Now, of course, the Chevy Suburban has the largest gas tank, bigger than pickup trucks, but you get the point. And so now this is the next plan. This is why that's happening. They're pushing gas prices. It has nothing to do with the new Green Deal, okay? Because one, our infrastructure in our country will not sustain all the electric cars that we should change to. No, it's going to take 30 years, 20 years for that to happen. They have to go through every single electric line in America. One, you have to put more. Two, you have to redo the whole thing. It's not going to be 10 years that's going to be done. It's 20 years at the minimum. Who's going to pay for it? The high gas prices are purpose to stimulate growth in America for manufacturing again, because oil prices dictate the price of products, between the shipping, everything. There's a change that's happening. This is a plan that's taking place right now. Now, as of today, yes, there's a demand to buy real estate and there's not enough supply, but you have to remember, right now, ask yourself, why would you buy at the top of the real estate market? And ask yourself that question. It's already 5 years that the real estate market has been booming to the extreme. You look back at each cycle before there was a collapse and ask yourself, how many years was it booming before it collapsed? And why did it collapse? Not only do we have interest rates going up, which means that people, their income isn't going up, they have to put more down payment on their house. Those people who are taking their savings to buy a house, that's another big problem that we have in the future, because interest rates are going to keep going up, and they have to go up because now it's a contraction in our economy that has to take place. And in order for you to get people to save money and put it in the bank so that there's no more printing of money to the extreme, that's what the mortgage market created. They had to keep printing money. And so today, that's the change that's happening. The manufacturing will come back, and it will, very fast. Because think about how many people today have equity in their house that could take $100,000, rent a garage somewhere, and start manufacturing ceramic cups. You don't need 100 people to make ceramic cups. You just need some space and your family to do it. Cost pennies. What about spatulas? Why are we buying it from another country if we don't have to ship it? It could be made locally. I want to answer the question to the person who sent me that question regarding supply and demand. As you can see, if you're not from this country and you don't understand the history and you're an investor, you're gonna go bankrupt. building something right now, it's not a good idea. I don't care about all the demand that's going on. So when people realize that they're buying at the top of the market, they start to pull back. And they realize that they're going to wait until there's a market bubble. And that's what starts to slow the economy. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please remember, if you like my channel, to subscribe so you get my future videos. And also, send me messages to the live chat and I'll make future videos just for you. And please, if you liked my video, do thumbs up on the bottom of the screen to say thank you. And finally, please share my video with at least 5 people. I want to thank you so much.